it's alive. It all interacts with each other, and being able to recreate that in the box is the shit. I'm Riccardo Damian, I'm an engineer producer. We are in my studio here in my house in London. I work with international artists such as like Jorja Smith, Sam Smith, Sampha, Lady Gaga, Mark Ronson, Miley Cyrus, and a few others. I grew up in this tiny little village called Treviso, which is a medieval-looking town in northeast Italy, near Venice. There is a very beautiful, it's a private studio, but it's kind of like a big complex in the middle of the countryside with a few control rooms and a big live room. Analog desks, tape machines, a lot of Neumann mics, DBX, old DBX compressors, 1176s, 78s, all beautiful, like old vintage. And that was kind of like the first time I approached a real studio. I think the benefit of growing up with analog is you have to use your tools efficiently, especially when you're using tape. You just can't fuck up, You have to get your sounds as good as possible at source, and you have to EQ, process, compress in a certain way to tape. The world of plugins is amazing because at the time I would have one 1178. That's it. Okay, where do I use this beautiful machine? What priority do I give to different elements to have it? Now I can have as many as my computer handles. So it's beautiful. Working with Mark Ronson has been actually an ongoing process for the last 8 years. I started back in 2014. It's been a process, and it's been an evolution as well. I think we built together in a way, an unspoken way of working. And you get to a point where when you work with somebody for so long, you don't even talk anymore. You know what the other person wants and vice versa. So usually we have a lot of gear and we will have that with us. If we don't, we try and recreate it. But the process is, depending on what we are doing, I just usually walk in a room and I know Mark's sounds. I know what he likes and what he doesn't like, what he's likely to want to do, regardless of the session. Today we are working on a song by my band called Bob and the Apple. This is a mix that I had done in 2017 that I revisited using specifically Arturia plugins, and it's great. Okay, producer hat is off, mixer hat is on. What do I need to do to make this smooth? Usually start with the drums and then I do the vocals. So these drums would have been recorded already with a lot of analog processing. So on my kick and on my snare, I'm adding a little bit more of the 165, because the reason I love the 165 is that you really get a crazy attack going pretty long with the attack, but then also stop it with a peak stop. This is the drum kit. So that's the whole drum sound, and specifically my kick in, it's just getting a little bit more of control on the attack. This is without it. In a way, it just brings it all together a little bit more, and this helps me control that part of the transient that I don't really need. I have it on the snare, and I split my snare track in two, and one of them is purely the attack. Heavily gated, and again, controlling that with my 65. And then I have a more like full body snare. In a way, my limiter is working harder and longer, but together they sound like this. And then there's a little bit of snare bottom where I usually use a 76. And it just works. Also on the bus, so where all the drums go in, including the reverbs and everything, I manipulate that with a bit of a Neve flavor because it's always good. This is my drums without the bass processing. Then I add the Neve, which literally I'm just helping out a few frequencies that bring out the elements I want to. And this is something I do quite often. Sometimes I want to try and get a vibe, so I scroll through the presets, find something that sounds great, and don't even look at what the name is. It doesn't matter. In this instance, it happens to be drum bass, and then I always tweak it. And then after that, I go into the beautiful bass force. my dry path is going straight to the clipper. The clipper is on the output, so the clipper will affect the whole thing. But that's perfect because I use the clipper just to get rid, again, to a little bit more of those transients, trying to get a little bit more loudness without destroying my transients. And the clipper is really good at that. So start with the clipper off. What I do is that I start working on a parallel compressor. Decide what elements I want to have in that chain. In this case, I am using the EQ and then the compressor. This compressor is nuts. It actually has the nuclear logo here, like radioactive. We can really destroy things, but in a very beautiful way. I just use the EQ and the compressor to get my parallel sound, which is this. Super squashy, super fast attack and release. The last thing I do is listen to the saturation level, which is a whole other level that you can then take a split from every point of the chain. So it's pretty nuts. And again, I do the same thing. I turn on these two and I try and mix it in. And then the last thing I do is I add the clipper. I just felt like I wanted to give it a little bit more of a gated reverb vibe. So it sounds great, but the beauty of this is that if you drop down the menu, there's some amazing things that you can do. The envelope follower is handling the gated reverb. But what this does, this is unbelievable. You can basically have whatever wave you decide to have, and you can apply that to parameters. So I wanted to create a difference between the first snare and the second snare in the beat. And so what I'm doing here, I'm actually having more decay on the first hit and less decay on the second hit. And that's basically modulating my decay. And so if you hear it, this is what the reverb sounds like. Which I think is fucking amazing. You know, like, this is the beauty of digital. You would never be able to do this with an analog unit or even like a digital hardware unit unless you're there programming and punching in, and like, it's so easy. I think that song specifically, it's a song that came up on tour that Bruno and his band were jamming. At least the riff. At that time, Mark and Bruno were working together a lot in studios, live, they were together. And so at some point that jam would have popped up and it would have, you know, in a way drove itself to landing on, oh yeah, this is going to be a song for Mark. And it was a collaboration, you know, it's two great geniuses just making music. I was, you know, fortunate enough to witness some of it. The process of the whole song was very natural and just based on musicianship and good taste and good sounds. And it was, for me, that was like my first gig. I did all the drum processing. Mainly it's a Lindrum that we had. We had the actual Lindrum. So we recorded these samples, but then run them through tape, vary speed the tape to make sure that you record them at a higher speed, so then you bring back, go to the original speed, they sound fatter because you bring down the fundamentals and all the overtones and stuff. And then run them through like H3000s, RMX16s, plates, like a lot of different like beautiful units. Then I recorded all the guitars, potentially all the synths, I think, because the actual, this is the synth that was used, not this. And this is nothing else than a Juno 106 in disguise, is the consumer version because it has speakers. The Uptown Funk sound is super easy actually. I'm not a good keyboard player, but it's like, it's something like that. If I remember correctly. It's just a great song. It just really works. But it's so simple at the same time. Even dissecting the multitrack, it's like, there's honestly a handful of things. There's one bass, one drum kit with a bunch of samples, yeah, sure, but it's not like 700 tracks, you know what I mean? It's like, it's fairly compact and it's just great musicianship. There's a bunch of guitars. Mark played most of the guitars. I think Mark played all the guitars actually. And then, you know, you put Bruno Mars on top singing, you know you're in for a treat, you know. He's an amazing performer, amazing singer, just so energetic, just great. One of my favorite things here is the bass sound. As soon as you put this on, it's just bam, glued in. I have some acoustic guitars here that play in this sort of like Beatlesy section. And this is again one of those happy accidents. Wide mix bus on guitars, but I just want a little bit of width, a little bit of more shaping. Scroll through the presets. This happened, And then I tweaked it, and it just sounds like this is what it sounds like without it in the mix. Just did exactly what I needed, which is spread it, make it a little tiny bit more brighter. So this is a combination of the Dimension D and the flanger. I just needed a little bit of movement, because in the song, it's actually quite prominent, but it becomes too prominent. It shadows a bunch of other stuff. So instead of wanting to change the actual frequency of it, I was like, I need modulation, I need to move it a little bit. And so I added the Dimension D, which works amazingly in mono. And then the flanger, which I just love flangers. And it really makes a difference in the mix. The first time this happens, it's just one guitar. At the end, you have two, you have a double track. And so what I did there, I used different choruses. So I used the Juno on the other one. So I'm not using the same thing, and they don't blur out in the middle. So they are quite even more separate if I can. So on the right side, I used the Juno. I didn't use the flanger because it became too metal. And then I think I tried to use the Mini Moog filter. You can do amazing things with this. I actually used it only for the specific cutoff frequency. But I mean, there's some amazing stuff here. I really recommend just. This stuff really works sometimes. You know, it gets crazy. The other modulation I really love to use is the Mutron. And I don't know how to describe it, but for me, this is the most recognizable phaser ever. I love all these three, you know, chorus, phaser, and flanger are obviously very musical tools, but also for me, it's quite utility in a way, if it makes sense. Sometimes you just really want to impose a sound. Sometimes you just want to move things and create space. And then again, I use the Juno, for example, all on the atmospheric bus just to widen out a little bit. With Adele, we were working on this song that ended up on 25, one of the bonus tracks of 25. I think the chain would have been a 47 into a, I can't remember what the pre was. Might have been the desk preamp, actually. We had a beautiful MCI 500 into an 1176, which is quite, it's a black face, probably a Rev D, I think. That's what we had. So it can be harsh at times. And it was working really well in containing her vocals, but it was just a little too pronounced on the mids. And so we had the analog version of it, and you know, the idea was, okay, we need some tubes to smoothen it out. We need some warm tube sounds to just, you know, counterbalance what we have after the 1176. And so out of the 1176 went into this guy, just made it super smooth, and that was it. It's not even about the settings. It's just going through it and going through the tubes. Obviously, you know, making sure there's no over compression or no compression. Just a good sweet spot, and it was just the sound. I think we didn't even put anything else after that. Obviously, I think Tom Elmers mixed it. Tom would have put what Tom does, which is usually CL1B and 1176. But in terms of tracking, and that was kind of a big moment, because we had this, but we didn't really know where it was shining the best. We had it, we were trying it, but we never really settled on, oh yeah, this is great for that. And that was a big moment. So when you guys came up with the plugin, I was like, sick. I love this. And so I've been using it all the time.
She's the breeze that lets you breathe in.
So what I would normally do is, on this instance, because it's actually quite mellow, I would start with something slow. So our friend here.
She's the breeze that lets you breathe in. She's the wind.
There you go. So that frequency is quite annoying. So I will have that maybe louder in the side chain. I don't need that. I barely need that. That's gonna target the compressor to focus on that frequency.
She's the breeze that lets you breathe in. She's the wind that makes you swing.
It just really works.
Around.
I really like that. And so after that, then I would put a faster compressor. What I look to do with this is to even out all the peaks and stuff. So
She's the breeze that lets you breathe in. She's the wind that makes you swing around.
sometimes you can go super fast.
Oh, 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 oh.
So without having to flicker between plugins, without having to open different windows, you do have all the tools you need in the same window, which is great. But I would then go for more vibe EQ, and usually, you know, it goes without saying that the Neve is the guy. You can experiment, obviously you can go.
She's the breeze that lets you breathe in. She's
If you need a distortion, you know, something saturated, you really play with this. It's a continuous control, so you can really fine tune it.
She's the breeze that lets you breathe in. She's the wind that makes you swing around.
So you can totally get here, which is a comfortable level of harmonics without, you know, going crazy. And that's it.
She's the breeze that lets you breathe in. She's the wind that makes you swing around.
When I have a lot of vocals, then that's the beauty of digital, is that I can put a plugin on every track, depending on, you know, how many I've got. And again, full-on manipulation of what's going on. The fact that you can alter the speed of the motor, make it kind of like lo-fi, it's really, really priceless. I love this because you can really get a crazy color.
She's the breeze that lets you breathe in.
So you can play with the original preamp or the germanium,
She's the breeze that lets you breathe.
or not have it.
She's the breeze that lets.
So there's three flavors of distortion as the actual tone of your slap, which I think is amazing. Adele is a real true professional. She knows exactly how to be in front of the mic, and that helps massively. You know, microphone technique is what makes the difference.
Wake me up now.
As an engineer that is growing up, that is getting into this world of blood, I really recommend just getting to know what really makes a good singer. Do they know how their voice behaves in front of the mic? And for example, Sam Smith is a master at this. Just manipulating the shape of your face and the relationship with the microphones to create different sounds. Sam is unbelievable at that. When you don't have a singer that is so skilled at that, then you might have to start suggesting things. I'm lucky enough, to be honest, to work with people that are really good at it. You know, like Adele for sure, but also Sam. Miley's great as well. She's rock and roll, you know, she's great. You almost never have to like suggest like, oh, by the way, that part was a little too belty, too close to the mic. Like, they know because they can hear it. They've been doing this for so long, so it comes with experience. But it's always a good skill set to have as an engineer, to be able to recognize on a take if something like that needs to happen. In certain situations, like the choruses where there's a lot of other stuff going on, I needed movement. And so what I did, I actually, again, scrolling through the presets, find something you like and memorize it, and then go back to it and use it at some point when you need it. And so I did this. So this is applying random modulation, as the preset name says. It does so much, because in the track,
Wake me up.
so in a way, it makes the instrument more noticeable, but not throughout the whole chorus. So there's pockets, there's moments where it jumps out, and then moments where it disappears. So in a way, it creates bounce, it creates movement, and that's what I wanted to do with this. It goes beyond. You can really go nuts with this, sort of like sidechain. It's really, really creative. The other one that I use quite a lot, and it behaves very differently, is the Matrix one. There's this sound here. This is without it. Again, very present sound, so it muddies up. No, doesn't muddy up, but it takes a lot of space, so I needed a little bit of movement. And I ended up settling on this. You can obviously, you know, tweak stuff and change it all. I think the other cool thing I did here was to use the V76s. We recorded these guitars back then, potentially with an Ampeg scrambler pedal, which is a similar sort of like broken sound like that, and they sound like this. And when I was mixing this, I felt like I needed a tiny bit more grit and edge, and I know that that's the V76 sound for me. just a combination between the color of the actual input preamp and a little bit of top end, a little bit like just, you know, going through it. And simple preset, the crunch preset really works. Again, generally my mix bus processing starts with a fast compressor, so it could be an SSL. I really dig the 609, which gives me actually one more layer of control because I have a limiter as well. So what I'm doing here, I'm just basically working on the most prominent peaks, which usually are drums and vocals. I'm not doing crazy amount, again 1.5, sometimes 2.1, 2 to 1, sometimes 4 to 1, depends on the song. I really try and tune the settings of my mix bus processing to the music. It's not about what setting it is, it's about what sounds good. Then I go into the beautiful 295. The only thing differently I'm doing is I'm boosting 3.5. It's good to see how this is being impacted and how you can, you know, you can see your filtering and stuff. I really like that. But this is the real game changer. And here I'm actually approaching it the same way as I'm approaching the on my drum bus, but just obviously being mindful it's the whole mix. So I start with nothing on. And then I see what I think I need to do. I start listening to the parallel compression path. In this case, I'm not putting anything on the chain, it's just a compressor. So, and then I mix it into taste. I am looking for some general harmonic distortion, but specifically trying to have a little bit more just crispiness, but like, you know, harmonic crispiness, not necessarily just polished, just to have a little bit more distortion up there. So I am blending in a little bit of the saturation path there, and then I'm adding a little bit of the clipper. This is not just mixing tools, this is production tools, recording tools, 100%. And it's really important to think that way, because more and more music is transforming to a point that even the multi-tracks you get as a mixer, they are so far more advanced that they would be 20 years ago, 15 years ago, you know, even maybe 10 years ago, because technology changes so fast. And so you need to have great tools at the beginning from the get-go. And it's not only for mixers, it's for everyone. And it's important to get good quality sound from the get-go. And if you can't do it in the analog domain, do it in the digital domain, but do it right. FX Collection is a Swiss Army knife. It has all the colors, all the flavors, and all the taste you need to do anything, from recording to production to mixing. You know, you really have all the spectrum, if it makes sense. You could be on a desert island and with a laptop and a pair of headphones and have the FX Collection and be fine. You wouldn't need anything else, you know what I mean? You wouldn't feel you're lacking anything.